The Haftorah for the portion of Shelach is the story of how Joshua sends spies to scout out the land of Israel. In particular, he takes only 2 spies and he sends them to Jericho, which is the lock of the entire land of Canaan. And he says, come back and tell us the news. The Haftorah, which is Joshua number 2, tells us, or Joshua chapter number 2, tells us how they come to Jericho and they meet a woman by the name of Rahab. And she was a harlot. This Rahab later converted to Judaism and became the wife of Joshua. In the interim, she takes them into the house, she hides them. When the king of Jericho finds out that these 2 spies are there, the king sends word to find out, where are these spies? Rahab tells the king they left already, they're not here, and they're gone. Maybe if you run after them, you can find them. In the interim, she hides the spies on the roof. After the king's soldiers leave, she tells the spies to run away and hide 3 days in the mountain hills. The Haftorah goes on to say that Rahab requests from the spies some sort of an ois emes, a true sign that the Jewish people will spare her and her family for doing this kindness and saving these spies. And the spies tell her that you will put a red scarlet cord outside your window, which is the wall of Jericho, and we will see it when we come in, and your family will be saved. She then lets these 2 spies out of the window. They climb down the wall from her window, and they wait 3 days, and then they return to Joshua. And the rest is history. The Jewish people surround the walls of Jericho. The walls of Jericho fall down, and they conquer Jericho. There are many questions here that come to mind. Number 1 is, Joshua sends spies, and in this week's Torah portion, Moshe sends spies. Moshe sends 12, and Joshua sends only 2. Why the discrepancy? Why does Moshe send 12, and why does Joshua send 2? Number 2, Moshe Rabbeinu sends them to the entire land of Israel. Scout out the entire land. And Joshua sends them only to Jericho. Who are the 2 spies? The 2 spies were Kalev ben Yefuneh. Kalev was one of the spies that returned with a good report. And the second spy was not Joshua himself, because he was now the leader of the Jewish people. The second spy was Pinchas, who was the grandson of Aaron, who became the high priest. Pinchas was the one that went into the land together with Kalev. But the Torah doesn't mention their names. It says they were spies. They were secret spies. They were so secret that even the book of Joshua doesn't tell us their names, that they were Kalev and Pinchas. Furthermore, Moshe Rabbeinu sent spies, and the spies messed up. Because of the spies, the Jewish people were now in the land or the desert for 40 years. The spies went and they scouted the land and they spied the land for 40 days and 40 nights. And because of this, when they came back and told the negative report, they said, yes, it's true, it's a land of milk and honey, but it's also a land of giants, giant fruit, giant food. There's no way we can conquer the land. It's a land that consumes its inhabitants. So for 40 days and 40 nights, they scouted the land. God says, fine, because of this, you will be in the desert for 40 years. So after all of this, why does Joshua send spies? Perhaps they'll make a mistake again and cause the Jews to stay in the desert another 40 years. Why does Joshua send spies, even though Moshe Rabbeinu sent spies on his own and the Jews suffered? So how do we understand all of this? There was a major difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Joshua. At the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, God told the Jews they will conquer the land miraculously. There were no reason for spies. Moshe, however, sent spies in order to excite the Jewish people, to tell the Jewish people, look, we saw the entire land, it's amazing. And being that each tribe is different, each tribe has a different character trait, each tribe has a different mentality, Moshe Rabbeinu sent all 12 spies so that each one will go back to their tribe, to their shevet, and say, look, I was there. I'm one of you. I'm not a politician. I'm not trying to convince you about anything that's not there. I saw it with my own eyes. It's an amazing, holy place. It's a godly place. It's fertile. It's a place we will prosper. And the point was that each one of these leaders, these Nasiim, were supposed to inspire their people. And so Moshe Rabbeinu sends 12 spies. Joshua, on the other hand, was not sending the spies to inspire the Jewish people. It was a reconnaissance mission to know how to enter into the land and conquer the land. When it comes to sending spies for a reconnaissance mission, you don't tell the world who the spies are. You keep it a secret. And therefore, you keep it down in number to only 2. And you don't tell even the Jewish people who they are, because you don't want the word leaking out on YouTube or Facebook. Hey, these are the spies who are leaving now to check out Jericho. And therefore, they were quiet about it. And the Torah itself does not mention the names of the spies. In contrast to Moshe Rabbeinu, that there was no reason to send spies, because God already said, you will conquer the land miraculously. But if you want to excite the Jewish people, fine, send the spies, Shelach l'daitucha, send them on your own accord. I don't think you have to send spies, says God. But if you want to, go ahead. So the spies were not really in danger because the entire mission was miraculous. If you think about it, to be able to check out and scout the entire land of Israel in 40 days, from east to west and north to south, was miraculous. And the entire trip was a miraculous trip because God sent them with his blessings. It was under Moshe Rabbeinu's rulership, the entire journey and the entire story was miraculous. And therefore, it was okay to say the 12 tribes, it was okay for people to know who they were. And even there, they weren't hiding, they were walking around amongst the people of the land. So this is the basic difference between Joshua and Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, was Joshua commanded or not? There are 2 approaches. One is he was commanded. Joshua was commanded to send spies, and Moshe was not commanded. And that's why Moshe's trip foiled, and the spies came back with a negative report. But Joshua, who was commanded by God, had success in his journey, in his voyage. Another approach is that Joshua was not commanded by God, but he wanted to continue the objective of Moshe Rabbeinu. And he wanted to continue Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership, being that Moshe Rabbeinu was his teacher. Moshe was compared to the sun, and Joshua was compared to the moon. he saw the spies as a continuation of Moshe Rabbeinu's first intent to conquer the land. And so Moshe Rabbeinu sends 12 spies, and he sends 2 spies. Why? Because Joshua looked at the conquest of Israel as a 2-part series, as a 2 stages. The first stage was Moshe Rabbeinu sending in 12 spies. The second stage was Joshua sending in 2 spies. When we conquer the world, when we conquer our own personal world, when we conquer our community, which means to bring godliness and ethics and values and leadership to our community and upon ourselves, there are 2 ways to do this. Number 1 is the collective way, and number 2 is the individual way. In other words, the individual way is that each person is different. Each person is unique. Each person has their style. And we have to complement that style. And we have to embrace that style. And we have to encourage that unique style because each one of us is created differently. No 2 faces are alike. No 2 minds are alike. 2 Jews, 3 opinions. And God created us this way because God likes this creativity. God likes the fact that we are different and unique. So each one of us use our talents to bring the light of God to the world. This is stage number 1. This was the stage that Moshe Rabbeinu sent 12 spies to the land of Israel to come back, each one to their tribe, to teach them and to inspire them how to conquer the land. Then you have the collective style, and that is Joshua. He sends only two spies because in Torah, there are 2 basic approaches and there are 2 basic rules. Number 1 is follow the positive commandments and do not violate the negative commandments. These are 2 basic rules, Asay Tov and Sumei Ra. And this is universal for every Jew, from the smartest to the not so smart, from the richest to the not so rich. Every single one of us needs to follow the whole Torah. How we follow the Torah, each one is a bit different. I make gefilte fish with sugar. You make gefilte fish with salt. I make salmon with ketchup and mayonnaise. You make salmon with teriyaki sauce. Each of us has a different taste bud. Each of us has a different style. But it comes to Shabbos, we both eat fish and poultry and meat. And the same is true every day we daven. Some of us daven longer, some of us shorter. Every day we study Torah, some of us more hours, some of us less hours. But each one of us needs to follow the entire Torah. The fact that each one of us has a soul, each one of us has a spark of God, each one of us are hardwired from God himself. We have within us 613 commandments and 613 different chords. We need to educate and we need to satiate our bodies by following the entire Torah. So this is the basic 2 approaches between Moshe and Joshua. Moshe looked at individuality, therefore he sends 12 spies, and Joshua looks at the universality and the collectiveness that each one of us possess. Furthermore, who does he sell? Who does he send? He sends Kalev and Pinchas. Why did he send these 2 people? Why Kalev and why Pinchas? On one hand, Joshua wanted to connect the present with the past. As we said earlier, it wasn't a separate mission, a new mission, but Joshua viewed himself as the successor of Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu took the Jews out of Egypt, and Joshua is now going to bring them into Israel. He was now continuing Moshe Rabbeinu's work. So Moshe Rabbeinu sent 12 spies into the land of Israel. He's now going to connect this set of spies, this reconnaissance mission to the previous mission by the fact that he sends Kalev, who was there with the previous 12 spies. Number 2 is he now also looks at the future. The future is that we are bringing the entire nation into Israel, but the future is more than that. The future is also the coming of Mashiach, because if the Jews were worthy when they entered into Israel at that time, Mashiach would have come. Now, we find something interesting, that there's a difference between the period before Mashiach and the period after Mashiach. The period before Mashiach, only 12 tribes inherited the land. The tribe of Levi did not inherit the land. Why is it that the tribe of Levi did not inherit the land? Because the tribe of Levi primarily was supposed to be the Kohanim and the Levim serving in the Beis HaMikdash. They were supposed to be the teachers and leaders of Bnei Yisrael. Therefore, to give them a piece of land would challenge them with the daily routines and responsibilities of plowing and sowing and growing and harvesting and perhaps becoming materialistic. So the tribe of Levi were not given a piece of land in the land of Israel. They had 48 cities or 42 cities, plus the additional 6 cities of Ari Miklat where they were able to live. But it wasn't officially their land. When Mashiach comes, however, it says that the tribe of Levi will also acquire a piece of land. Why is that? Because the growth on the land will be supernatural. It's going to be miraculous. You won't have to go and schlep and plow and cut each piece of each stalk. There's going to be many, many miracles that will happen on their own. And therefore, the average person will not have to be preoccupied with plowing and sowing and harvesting. Things are going to happen on its own, like an apple tree. You just pick the apples. The wheat's going to grow on its own. The barley is going to grow on its own. The blueberries are going to grow on its own. You don't have to put out any fertilizer, nothing. It's going to rain and it's going to grow and it's going to be there for you when you need it. So there'll be much less time spent on agriculture and fixing and enhancing the land. This is true for the entire Am Yisrael, all 12 nations, and similarly for the tribe of Levi. Because of this, the tribe of Levi will be given a piece of land because it will not take them away from the service to Hashem. And similarly, the rest of the tribes of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, will now have more time, even though they own land, but being that they're putting less time into the land, they too will have more time to serve Hashem, to pray, to study Torah, etc., etc. And therefore, Joshua sends Pinchas as the second spy, because Pinchas is a Kohen from the tribe of Levi, to represent how the tribe of Levi in the future will also inherit the land of Israel. They send the spies to Jericho, not like Moshe, who sends 12 spies throughout the entire land of Israel, but Joshua only sends the spies to Jericho. Jericho. Why Jericho? So the simple interpretation is Jericho was the land, was the lock of the land. Once you get into the lock, you open the lock, you have the whole land. So first you got to conquer Jericho, and then you conquer the rest of the country. Now, because Jericho was the lock of the land, when the kings heard that the Israelites sent 2 spies to Jericho, not only the king of Jericho protected that land, but all the other 7 kings of the 7 major cities of Israel or Canaan also sent troops to Jericho to protect Jericho, because Jericho was the lock of the land. And therefore, if they get through Jericho, they're all in trouble. So each of the kings send their troops. Now, in truth, there were 31 kings in Israel, not only 7. There were 31 kings that had palaces in Israel because it was the most beautiful and fertile of all the lands. But there were 7 major kings that lived there all year round. So on a historical level, on a geographical level, on a strategic level, Joshua sends spies to Jericho. On a spiritual level, Jericho is the word yireach, which means sent. And this applies to spiritually the garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action. Thought, speech, and action is something that each person can conquer. we have control over what we think. We have control of what we say. We have control over what we do. Now, we might be angry sometimes. You might want to kill somebody sometimes, but you have control. You have discipline. You have the power. The mind rules over the heart. You can't control yourself. So when it comes to thought, speech, and action, that is the first thing and the easiest thing for a person to conquer. Now, when it comes to midos, when it comes to emotions, that's already different. I may hate you, doesn't mean I will say something negative to you. I may not like you, doesn't mean I will do something negative to you. So emotions is something that we really have to work on and is much more difficult to conquer and to control. But our actions, our speech, and even our thought, every human being has the power to control. So therefore, the first thing Joshua does is let's conquer Jericho, alluding to the spiritual garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action. Once we conquer that, it'll be a lot easier to conquer our emotions, which are the 7 additional kings in the land of Canaan. So the spies come and they meet Hever, or Rahab, rather. Rahab is this harlot that everybody, all the kings go to. She has an inn. And yet the Torah makes a big deal about her. And as we find out later that she converts to Yiddishkeit, and she marries Joshua, who was never married till then, by the way. Because all the years in the desert, he was a student and servant of Moshe. He was totally connected to Moshe and subservient to Moshe. And in passing with Moshe, he couldn't get married. He studied Torah, he served Moshe, he took care of Moshe. There was no time for him to get married. Once he enters into the land of Israel, now he is married and has children. Tarizal says something very powerful, and that is that Rahab came from a very, very high soul. She was a reincarnation of Cain, in the original story of Cain and Hevel, of Cain and Abel. She came from Cain. And she had Ruach HaKodesh, she was a prophetess. She was able to tell the 2 spies, stay for 3 days in the mountains and you will be protected. How did she know 3 days? She saw it with her own eyes, spiritually and prophetically. Now, she goes on to say, I want you to give me an ois emes, a true sign. Why an ois emes? Because she is a reincarnation of Cain. Why did Cain say? Why did Cain say? After Cain killed Abel, Hevel, everybody wanted to kill him. He turns to God, God, I can't survive. God says, fine, I will give you a sign of my name. And people will see the sign on your forehead, they will not hurt you. What was the sign that Cain received? Says the Arizal, it was the letter Vav. The letter Vav of God's holy, ineffable name. The Vav represents a letter of truth. Now, Rahab, who is a reincarnation of Cain, says, I also want a sign. I want a sign of Emes. I want the Vav that you gave Cain. The Vav of God's name, of the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. I want that same sign to protect me when the Jewish people are going to come and conquer Jericho. And they say, fine, put down a cord. The cord is the letter Vav. That cord will be your ois emes. That will be your true sign. The sign which is emes, the letter of emes, the letter of truth, is the letter Vav. It's straight, a straight person. It's not a liar, it's not foolish, doesn't go to the right, to the left. Straight like an arrow. The letter Vav, the letter of truth. So this holy woman, Rahab, now reconnects with her soul. She now acquires the Vav of God's name. She now has this emes, this holiness, this truth in her. She's able to now connect with Joshua, marry Joshua. Later, she is reincarnated into Hever HaKen, who is the husband of Yael. And then later, the same soul is reincarnated into Chana, who is the mother of Shmuel Hanavi. So this is the history of the soul of Rahab. Now, it's interesting to note that we see here that a male soul can go into a female, and a female soul can go into a male. So it's okay for a male to have a female soul. He's still a male. It's okay for a female to have a male soul. He's still a male. It doesn't matter on your soul. It matters on the way God created you. So this is the story of the Haftorah of Shelach. It teaches us that each one of us needs to conquer our own city, our own body, our guf. And we have to make it into Eretz Yisrael. What does Eretz Yisrael mean? The land of Israel. Yisrael means the ruts, to run, to do the will of God. How do we do this? We do this by sending 12 spies, and we do this by sending 2 spies. We do this, number one, individually by working on all of our midos, our emotions, our actions, all the 613 commandments of the Torah. But we also do this collectively. And that is by setting fences around our life, by establishing priorities in our life. And that is, I'm following the 2 paths. I'm going to do good. I'm going to go away from evil. Furthermore, these 2 spies represent thought, speech, and action. I will first begin to purify and to refine and conquer my thought and my speech and my action. Then I will work on the 12 spies. I will work on the 7 midos, the 7 emotions. So this is a trick. This is a secret of how we can conquer our own Israel, how we can conquer our own individual body, and how we can truly become free from slavery, from slave mentality, from Egypt, and have this ois emes, have this letter of truth of God on us. That when people see you, aha, this is a God-fearing person. This is a God-fearing Jew. This person walks with God. This person talks about God. This person sees God. That is the level that we need to reach. That is the level that Rahab attained in this Haftorah. They tell a story that a artist once came to the Rebbe, and the artist was discussing paintings and drawing and the idea of being a free thinker and not being limited to specific and individual aspects of art. And then the artist went on to say and asked the Rebbe, you know, the Torah is the opposite of art, because the Torah says you have 613 commandments, you have all these restrictions, you have all these prohibitions. If you want to be an artist, you want to be able to be colorful and famous and to express yourself and to be alive, then how can we follow the Torah as well? So the Rebbe said to him, let me ask you a question. What's the difference between the sun and a laser beam? They both give off light. And the truth is, the heat of the sun is even hotter than the heat of a laser beam. But yet, a laser beam has the power to cut through iron walls and metal doors. And the sun can shine all day, but it won't melt these doors. The difference is that the sun is all over the place. It shines throughout the entire world, the entire globe. But the laser beam is very focused. It's confined, it's constrained. But because it's focused, it has the ability to go through all obstacles that are standing in its way. And this is the trick. This is the inspiration that we receive from the portion and Haftorah of Shelach, to break through this lock, to break through Jericho, to break through our limitations in our life, and to be able to truly conquer our land and to have true freedom in our daily life. So we hope and pray that, being that we are discussing not only the 12 spies, but also the 2 spies, and how Joshua entered into the land of Israel, And Joshua means Yeshua, salvation. Hashem should send us the ultimate salvation. The coming of Mashiach, Amen.